Tonight, Niue commemorates its 76th annual Anzac Day, Chief Electoral Officer on the upcoming General Elections 2023, and the first sawmill to Niue in years. Good evening, I'm Sarai Mangawa, and this is your BCN News. Leading our news tonight, the Australia and New Zealand Army Corps, otherwise commonly known as Anzac Day, was commemorated on Tuesday, the 25th of April, earlier this week. For most of the island, they attended the National Memorial Service held at the Alofi North Village Green, a day of remembrance, reflection and recognition of our fallen heroes who gave their lives in the First World War. Here's more on this story. This year marks 76 years for the Anzac commemorations. Organised by the Niue RSA Committee with the support of the government, the Australia and New Zealand High Commissions, the National Memorial Service took place before dawn on Tuesday morning this week. The Master of Ceremony for the day was RSA Secretary Mr. Peter Eufunaki. The RSA reps and Boys and Girls Brigades of the villages marched off from the Centenary Building to the National War Memorial. LDS President Jare Ringamoto gave the opening prayer for the program. Followed after was an opening hymn by the Niue RSA community. A devotion was given by the Ekalesia Niue President Reverend Nevi Salatielu. The RSA Roll of Honour was then read by RSA representatives from Tuapa and Mutalo. The guests stood for the last post in respect of the flag raising for Niue, New Zealand and Australia, followed by an Anzac dedication ode read by RSA representatives from Alofi. The gun salute by the Niue Police was led by Sergeant Romeo Jackson. Followed after was a hymn by the Niue RSA community. Speeches were delivered by Niue RSA Vice President Mr. Langa Lavini, followed by Australia High Commissioner Her Excellency Louise Allerton, New Zealand High Commissioner Her Excellency Helen Tanner, and from the Niue Government Minister Honourable Sauni Tongatule, and finally Premier Honourable Dalton Tangilangi. Australia High Commissioner Allerton shares the history of the Anzacs.
Since 1916, Anzac Day has been one of the most important dates on Australia's calendar. At first, it gave people a chance to honour the original Anzacs. Gradually, it became a day for those who'd served in the First World War. These days, Anzac Day is an occasion to honour all who have served: Australians, New Zealanders, Pacific Islanders, and of course, Niuean. Today, we gather to reflect on that service. We recognise the service men and women who lost their lives in military operations. We recognise the men and women who returned home forever changed. We recognise that all conflicts have a lasting impact on extended families and our communities. We recognise and honour the values that have been invested in the original Anzacs: loyalty, selflessness and courage. Every year we recognise and remember, lest we forget.
In her speech, New Zealand High Commissioner Helen Tanner shared the importance of remembering Anzac for all the lives lost not only from the war, but also today with the conflicts in Europe.
Today is a day of reflection, and it's a day of when we pay tribute and thank all of those who have sacrificed to make a better and safer world. We are here today quite simply to pay our respects and to remember. More than 30,000 New Zealand military personnel have died in conflict since 1915. And while the First World War was meant to be the war to end all wars, sadly this was not the case. Anzacs have been involved in many conflicts since, and then still today as the wars continue. And as we've already heard, the struggle for peace is continuing and ongoing in Europe. So while we remember the Anzacs, let us also today remember the thousands of innocent lives that have been lost in Ukraine. Because what happens in Ukraine, what is happening this week in Sudan, and what is happening in Myanmar and other parts of the world matters. It affects us all.
The program proceeded with the laying of wreaths, a closing hymn and benediction given by Niue Seventh-day Adventist Pastor Akuila Salampongi, and concluded with an Anzac breakfast. It was a day of remembrance of our fallen heroes and warriors who sacrificed their lives in the war. We will always remember them, lest we forget. On Monday this week, 11 people took up the opportunity to vote in advance of polling day on Saturday. According to the Chief Electoral Officer Darren Tohovaka, the 11 people applied to vote in advance before they departed on the flight out on Monday. Meanwhile, Mr. Tohovaka is reminding all eligible voters on some of the changes and protocols that voters should be aware of before Election Day. Here's Esther Bavihi with more on this story.
More than 1,100 people will be heading to the polls on Saturday to cast their vote for the 6 Common Roll members from a total of 17 candidates this year. 8 villages will also be voting for their representatives from the village of Alofi North, Makefu, Higutawake, Mutalau, Lakapa, Liku, Avasele and Tamakotonga. According to the Chief Electoral Officer, Darren Tohovaka, there are some changes to the names of the candidates for the Common Roll. He explains here.
As has been notified of the public notices for the members of Parliament for the village, there's just a slight change to some of the names so that people when come on Saturday, they will know who that person is. So I'd just like to go over these names very quickly. These are the names that will appear on the ballot paper so that there's no confusion about who exactly we're talking about. So Whaapoia Kesi, Mark Herbert Blumsky, Terry Donald Coe, Emani Hale Manawa Lui, Kahelani S. Sinhemana Hiko, Olav Tawave Jacobson, Befa Richmond, Lisimoni Tongahai, Ete Lotomaanu, Pasene Misiepo, Fisa Ingilisi Pingia, Victoria Posimani Kalauni, Tongia Likalika Saniholo, Billy Graham Talangi, Sonia Manungi Taumaife Talangi, Julie Sophie SMT Talangi Funaki, Crossley Tatui, Charlie JK Tohavaka, and Tamuta Utalo.
The polling stations will be located in the church and village or community halls, and there will be a marquee set up at the village green of the village of Higutawake.
Polling hours, so you need to vote after 9 a.m. and before 6 p.m. If you do arrive at 6 p.m., you can go into the polling station. They will close the station and allow you to vote. Polling officials, so there will be 4 officials for the village member of parliament and the Common Roll member of parliament elections. The returning officers and polling clerks. The only exception will be Alofi South, Vaea, Hakupu, Toi, Namukulu, Tuapa, where they only have Common Roll elections, and there will only be 2 officers, the returning officer and the polling clerk.
Although it has been widely notified over the recent days and weeks, it is still a good reminder for voters on what is expected or the process at the polling station and some of the rules that you must be mindful of.
Secret. For the voting process, even though we have been through quite a few elections, I just want to go over what to expect on Saturday. So you'll go to the polling station, there'll be 2 returning officers or 1 returning officer. You go to them, state your name. Your name will be, the name will be on the roll, will have a line drawn across it, and you have a ballot paper issued to you. You go to the assigned place, you use the pencil and the ruler to put a line across the candidate or the candidates you do not want to vote for, and you leave the name of the candidate or the candidates you want to vote for. For the village, you leave 1 name. For the Common Roll, you leave 6 or less than 6 names. Please make sure before you take your ballot paper and put it in the box that you actually physically count how many you have left. If you have more than 6, then it will be called an invalid vote, and then your vote won't be counted. So just want to make sure people understand that. There are a lot of names on the Common Roll. There's 17 altogether, so it's important that you do a final check. Fold your ballot paper, put it into the assigned box for village or Common Roll.
For those who are unable to physically make it to the polling station and want to vote from your homes, such as the elderly or those with mobility issues, you must contact or inform the electoral office at Fonuakula before the elections, or contact the returning officer early on the morning of the general elections on Saturday. The returning officer will then attend to the person's home to conduct their vote. The Electoral Office is also working on finding out who will be voting from the hospital, those who are in hospital or the aged care unit, and the Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Darren Tovaka, will be conducting their votes. Mobile phones are not permitted into the polling stations, and the Niue Police Department will also be assisting and patrolling during the elections on Saturday. Candidate campaigns are to cease or to stop. The campaign process will come to an end on Friday at 6 p.m.
It sets out that any broadcast or media statements should be finished by 6 o'clock on Friday, the 28th, so this Friday. We also acknowledge that social media is a very new thing in terms of our law as it stands. So we just kindly urge people to, if you have any posts, if you can kindly put those down before 6 p.m. We acknowledge that we have no way of controlling these, but we do urge people to be considerate around those measures. If you have fixed notices, you can still have them up on polling day, just so long as they're about 805 meters or half a mile away from the polling place and it's not visible. So you can still have those up on polling day.
The General Elections 2023 will be broadcast live on TV Niue's Channel 8 this Saturday, starting at 6 p.m. It will also be live streamed on our BCN Facebook, and there will be a live broadcast as well on Radio Sunshine.
A team of 4 New Zealand police specialists arrived on the island a week ago and have been working with the Niue Police Department on a special program known as the Pacific Island Prevention Policing Program, looking for ways to reduce the drivers of crime by creating soluble prevention operating models and interventions. Here's more on this story. The team conducted a training needs analysis to identify the needs and gaps of the Niue Police, in particular with cybersecurity and the Prevention Policing Program. BCN News spoke with Inspector Brendan Keenan earlier this week on the Pacific Island Prevention Policing Program that they were here for. He says it's a multilateral program across multiple realm countries and other realm countries, Niue being one of them, and so they were here to look at a prevention operating model for Niue Police. Inspector Keenan says they found alcohol as the main driver of crime in the Pacific Island countries.
One of the main things that we've discovered so far is that that alcohol is quite a major, a driver of crime for a lot of the Pacific Island countries. So we're really trying to focus on what interventions could we put in place for alcohol, because often it's the alcohol that leads into other drivers of demand. For example, alcohol could affect people drink driving on the roads, or it could create violence, or it could create disorder. So we're looking at interventions that we can do to get ahead of that sort of threat, or get ahead of the game in terms of how can we prevent crime happening before it happens. We're very mindful that all police organisations are always limited with resources, staff, vehicles, and so it's really important that we do prevention activities to reduce our demand.
Inspector Keenan is mindful that all police organizations are limited with resources, staff and vehicles, and are working on prevention operating models that would help reduce their demand. Cybersecurity specialist Enoka Fitirika told BCN News that supporting realm countries, especially Niue, is important during a high rate of cybercrime in the Pacific.
I think with the increase of cybercrime within the Blue Pacific, it's important that we equip our Pacific nations, especially here in Niue, Mamain being a focus country for New Zealand, just to conduct and identify gaps that we can support Niue as best as we can, and particularly the Niue Police.
BCN News understands that the bill for cybersecurity in Niue still remains dormant for many years. Fitirika is hopeful that Niue will be able to pass this bill sooner rather than later, especially with the current high rate of cybercrime in the Pacific. The team have returned back to New Zealand on Monday's flight this week and are looking to return back to the island in the next few months. An automated weather station site was commissioned last Thursday in the village of Liku. Also earlier today, a second commissioning took place at the Waipapahi farm in Hikutawake. According to PMCU and the Niue Meteorological Office, the site has been installed to assist in more localized weather data collection and weather forecasting.
The automated weather station is part of the GCF Climate Service Project funded by the Green Climate Fund facilitated by UNEP and implemented by the Project Management and Coordination Unit PMCU of the Niue government through their Project Implementation Unit. The government officials, employees and people from the village attended the commissioning held in Liku last week. Director of the Niue Met Services, Mrs. Rosie Misiapple, conducted the program for the day. There were speeches given by the Village Council Chairperson of Liku, Sione Tasipuletoa, and also the Minister of Natural Resources from the Niue Government, Honourable Mana Ainu. The Minister for Infrastructure, Honourable Crosley Tātui, and Premier Dalton Tagilangi were also present at the commissioning at Liku. The site was officially blessed, which followed with the cutting of the kapihi by Minister Ainu and Premier Tagilangi. There was also a demonstration on the use and the function of the automated weather station on the day. A similar and second commissioning of another automated weather station took place earlier this afternoon at the Waipapahi farm in Hikutawake.
Also on our other news for this week, Niue was recently able to welcome on shore its first sawmill after many years without one, and the man behind the arrival of the sawmill to the island is Anton Nemaya. BCN News was able to speak with Anton and sales consultant Greg Sheehan from the Peterson Portable Sawmills yesterday morning. The sawmill was sourced from a Rotorua, New Zealand company known as Peterson Portable Sawmills. Yesterday morning, BCN News was able to speak with Anton and also sales consultant Greg Sheehan of the Peterson Portable Sawmills, who arrived on the island on Monday with his wife to provide training on the use of the sawmill.
We talk through what they're doing and then we work out which model sawmill suits them. And so that's the process that we've been through. And of course, coming from Rotorua in New Zealand, the sawmill needs to be packed up and shipped across, and we've seen some photos of it being unloaded from the ship. And so yeah, it's quite a journey for the sawmill. We send sawmills all around the world, so this is not new for us, but it is exciting that they can come and do some training here.
Anton told BCN News that he is excited, and for now he plans to focus on how to use the sawmill before looking ahead on how it can benefit Niue.
It's just something I've been looking into for a number of years, and just did research, I guess, looked online, and these guys have really good customer reviews. The customers they have are very happy with them, and they do a lot of mills for the islands and Australia and New Zealand and the States as well, so I haven't heard anything bad, so I went with them. You know, they're based in New Zealand as well, so it's close for parts, and they managed to come all the way out here and do training as well, so it's been good.
And just before we leave you tonight, the interviews of the candidates for the common role with Esther Pavihi on Radio Sunshine over the past few days will be replayed tomorrow, Friday morning, starting at 9:30 a.m. Due to a power outage at Sekena, there was an interruption to our radio transmission, so some of you may have missed out on some of those interviews, so you can catch up tomorrow and hear all of the interviews at 9:30 a.m. Tune in also to Channel 8 on TV Niue on Saturday from 6 p.m. onwards for our live coverage of the 2023 general elections, which will also be live streamed on BCN Facebook page and on Radio Sunshine. Until then, have a good night.